Welcome to this giant art haul combining about 3 or 4 months of art supply shopping into one video. There's a mixture of Korean and international brands, but most of these are available pretty much globally, I think. Some of these supplies I've already used because I wouldn't just keep art supplies around for months and months until I have time to film a proper art haul video, while others, like a new watercolor set, just arrived yesterday and I can't wait to set up my palette, do some swatching and mixing tests as well. So buckle up for a long video. First up, there's the elephant in the room, which is this giant watercolor set from Mission Mijello. And I'll explain why this set in particular caught my eye in just a bit. It's from the art haul that arrived yesterday. That also included 2 brushes that I'm excited to try out. This brand is also Korean, it's called Wearingeul. I've been seeing them more and more pop up at the local art shop as well. They're kind of a higher end brand compared to, for example, Hwahong or Barbara. And these 2 particular brushes are from their travel sketch line, so their handles are a bit shorter than what is usual in this brand so that you can kind of fit them more easily. I kind of hoped they would be even shorter than this. Maybe about here would have been nice. Got a size 4 and a size 8 as I'm on a quest to finally move away from just using those water tank brushes and instead bring an actual water jar with me and use watercolor brushes. This one is from a previous art haul where I really just needed to push my order beyond the free shipping range of Omanon, of 50,000 won. And so I got a Cavendish Luminance colored pencil in French grey, 30%, because you can never go wrong with grey shades. And I really like the Luminance for mixed media sketching. They layer really well. Also from my most recent art haul, the big watercolor art haul, is this tiny Hwahong Zig Zag booklet. In German we'd say Zig Zag. I haven't opened this one yet. That's a really cute kind of ribbon they have here. And as you can see, it's really tiny. It's only 5 by 5 centimeters in this square format. And I generally really like Hwahong sketchbooks, so this was an easy include. It's the cutest little accordion sketchbook. I have 2 short trips coming up in July, and one where we go to the Korean mainland, the southern coast of the mainland. And so I hope to just sketch tiny travel impressions in here. For the final part of that recent art haul beyond the watercolors that I still have to swatch, we've got 2 fans. I got a medium-sized and a small-sized fan. One for myself, I want to maybe paint some traditional peach trees because it would match the little norige accessory at the bottom. These are incredibly handy if you can get one and it's still super hot in Europe. I usually carry one of these to kind of shield my face from the sun. It's not just about fanning yourself and creating some airflow. It's really kind of an improvised sun shield. And this bigger one is a gift that I want to paint for someone. So I'll do my own first and then see what would suit this one, because it has a red norige, so something other than peaches, maybe some camellia flowers, or I'll find something more seasonally appropriate. Last but not least, also from this recent art haul, is a smaller metal watercolor palette. Actually, good moment to maybe see. Yes, this would in theory fit, which in theory could hold one of those travel watercolor brushes, as I just tried out. I enjoy these kind of metal, quite lightweight palettes more than the ones with individual half pans. This one has more than enough pans for all of the new mission paints that I want to put in here, and then I have a couple extra for maybe a white gouache or a favorite like the Daniel Smith Lunar Black, This is by Wearingeul, just an aluminium watercolor palette with 39 pans. They have a really cute logo. These kinds of watercolor palettes are everywhere in Korean art shops at all kinds of sizes. And if you're ever in South Korea or have access to a Korean online art shop that ships internationally, I know there are like reshipping services. I don't know exactly how those work though. I highly recommend these. They are super sturdy. I still have one from 10 years ago. They're cheap and lightweight and come in a variety of sizes by different brands. So just take a look around. On that same note, if you are doing some Korean art shopping, I don't think the Hwahong brushes are easy to find internationally, but these are definitely something I recommend if you're looking for some cheap brushes that can withstand a lot of really intense painting sessions. This is the same brush, a little bristle brush in the size 1, and the one that I've been using versus the one that is still kind of just waiting in a jar still look pretty much the same. This one holds up incredibly well. I've painted 4 big illustrations with this one, and that might not sound like much, but when I say big, I really mean one was over 1 meter wide, the other is around 60 to 50 centimeters wide. These are really incredibly sturdy. I use them constantly. Same for the slightly softer and longer filberts, also here a size 1. The lines I use and can highly recommend are the 848 line, which is the softer filberts, and the 815, which is a more bristly, fluffy filbert kind of brush. I'm not sure what to even call this. And then I also have these very soft, fluffy, kind of mop-like brushes from their 866 line, and this one in particular, the smaller one, already also got used in multiple illustrations and is great for blending soft acrylic layers. Actually, I'm really curious if you'd be interested in kind of a roundup of all my Korean art supplies, what I'd recommend, maybe options that are available internationally also versus options that you'd maybe want to explore if you ever visit. Stuff like the Wearingeul oil pastels are already very famous, but there are specific shades that are harder to get internationally, stuff like that. So let me know if that would be interesting, if you'd like a roundup of recommendations. The Sennelier Acrylics have now probably shown up in a couple videos of mine. I'm not quite sure how editing and scheduling works out usually. I got 5 shades total. They're a bit more liquidy than my golden heavy body, despite these also being called heavy body haute viscosité. Some really beautiful colors, and I will show you some swatches in just a bit. Like I said, I had bought 5 shades of these Sennelier to test out, and because I like them so much, I actually added 3 more to my collection quite recently, and they just arrived. I also am swatching Cobalt Blue by Golden. I already own Cobalt Blue, it's one of my most used paints, but I only have it in the open version, which is the slow drying line by Golden. And for a paint I use this much, I should probably get the regular version as well, especially for the first paint layer. I love all my Cobalt shades. I also had a Golden Acrylics Ultramarine Violet in the past, but I must have at some point not closed the lid properly and it dried up in the tube. So instead of replacing it with another golden one, I used this one as a comparison paint and got it from Sennelier. Ultramarine Violet is always quite a transparent and also granulating pigment, so I like having options like this in my acrylic palette. This one is such a beautiful shade. It is called Terre Vert, which is also something that I own a golden acrylic version of, but the paint itself looks completely different. It is a mixed pigment, and this one here is much darker and deeper, and it reminds me of fir tree forests, while the golden one is more of a light grass green. Generally, the Sennelier paints come with a lot of mixed pigment paints, So convenience colors and just fun experimental additions to my color palette. Raw sienna is a new addition to my palette. I like my siennas, I like yellow ochres, so this felt like a great simple choice. And then swatching time was over because my cat decided it's time for a break. I first saw Wearingeul inks at a Korean book fair ages ago, and even back then I was so tempted to get some of their special editions. And recently I caved, mostly with the excuse of my husband also using a fountain pen, so let's just say that this is some kind of gift to him, but I am using it for painting as well. I know nothing about ink and fountain pens. That's one huge art supply niche I haven't yet gotten into, though I have used a lot of dip pens in the past with nibs like these. Lately, I've just been using regular cheap fountain pens with regular ink cartridges for a lot of my sketching and writing, kind of since last year, so these inks were too tempting to resist. You can jump to the end of the video if you're curious about the individual pen nibs. I'll be using them for quick line drawings in my art creation sketchbook. Of course, I just had to get the Dracula themed ink, a vibrant red with magenta undertones, and I love that it's not just a blood red. Then I wanted something glittery and blue, and the dewy starlight, inspired by a poem by Yi Yuksa, stood out to me. I constantly double check and triple check that these jars are closed well, and they seem to do just that. You can shake them upside down without any issue. Finally, I picked a more basic black ink, but with gold glitter accents, mostly because the name is adorable. You have to shake these quite a lot to get glitter in your ink. And so rather than using them to dip your pen into, you should probably get fillable ink cartridges that are easy to shake and keep the glitter in suspension. I definitely struggled with getting the glitter visible when using dip pens. Okay, I really have to speed up a bit. The first raindrops are falling and my voiceover will be terrible quality once that starts properly. I also restocked on some kneadable erasers. I always get the Faber-Castell ones and they came out with really cute new colors. There's this pink one, a dark blue one, navy color that I've already been using a bit, and there was a really cute teal one, which is actually the one I liked the most, but it fell down and my cat was nearby, and so it got contaminated with so much cat hair and I had to toss that out, which is also why I usually keep the plastic wrappings, because they make them more cat safe if I keep them on my desk. I have some iced coffee left over, so I'll take a 1-minute break and then it's time for watercolors. Like I mentioned in the beginning, these are the Mission paints. I think in Korea they are mostly called Mijello, like the, I don't know, the parent company, while this is the brand of watercolors. So Mijello Mission Gold Class Watercolors, and I got the Pure Pigment line. Funnily enough, despite this being a Korean brand, and I ordered them from my usual Korean online shop, so it's not like a special international edition. There is English, French, German, and Spanish. No Korean. Not even like on the inside where we switch completely to English. I think these are just generally kind of easy to find internationally as well. And I have a friend who's actually a really big fan of these, and she has their granulating colors, some of their gouache as well. I've tried some of the watercolors at her place, really liked how intense they are, and that's how I got to the point of ordering the largest available box. But there are specific paints in here that I'm personally drawn towards. There's, for example, the Indanthrone Blue, which is a paint I use so much when I paint with acrylics. Generally, my goal for this set is to have a watercolor equivalent of everything I use when I paint book illustrations or just anything really in acrylics. A while ago I taught like a kind of informal little art class, a mixture of friends and friends of friends that wanted an introduction to watercolors, and I actually had to borrow a basic palette from the friend that I mentioned that has some of these, or most of these honestly, because my own watercolor palettes are so focused on specialty paints. There's a lot of granulation. I really like the Daniel Smith Lunar Black, Lunar Blue, Cascade Green, and that felt both really difficult to teach basic watercolor theories or like color theories and blending and glazing with, because there's so much else going on, and it also felt quite intimidating to be there and recommend paints that are quite expensive, especially with how the exchange rate to the won is going. So I borrowed a kind of basic set just to do split primary palettes as an introduction. So a cool yellow, warm yellow, cool red, warm blue, cool blue, and just realized that I don't actually have those kind of basic colors. I have a Hansa yellow deep, but not a light or lemon yellow or anything like that, for example. I use a quinacridone gold. I like my limited and muted palettes or experiments. I found myself now on multiple occasions, both for that class, but also when I set up my own palettes, wishing that I had a more basic setup. The fun thing about this particular line of Mission paints is that it's the pure pigment set. All of these are single pigment paints, not mixes. And you've got the full breakdown of all the pigments used, Lightfastness ratings, etc. You can see that I already went in, and for some of these the paint name really is the pigment name. Ultramarine Violet PV15 is just ultramarine violet. Same for dioxazine violet PV23. But for some they used simplified names like rose madder is benzimidazoline, carmine, I can't pronounce that. So I just sat down and wrote down the actual pigment names whenever they are different from their paint names. We'll do some swatching and playing around with these. I'm so excited to give them a try. I just realized something about this cardboard setup. You can take out the two rows of paint separately, and this is actually a plastic insert and quite sturdy, so I guess I will remove them from this box and just keep them like this, which is much more practical on limited desk space. Like I said, the paint name and the pigment names aren't always identical, so I did take special note of that. The pure pigment line in particular stood out to me because I'm trying to learn more about pigments, about paint properties, and even the history of paint. So this just looked like a really interesting addition to my collection. Some of these paints are creamier than others out of the tube, and I did have an issue with the cerulean blue paint where the binder had separated from the pigment a lot. After some shaking and mixing with a piece of wire, the paint did come out and it cured okay, but I did find that a bit disappointing. I actually contacted Hwahong Net with pictures of this, and they said that it isn't eligible for a refund as certain levels of separation are to be expected. They also advised using a toothpick to mix the paint in the tube. I just prefer a wire as it's easier to wipe off. My approach to swatches is to let each paint do what it does best instead of trying to create a uniform look. I put water on my sketchbook page for a wet-on-wet application, and even that first touch of the brush will tell you so much about how a particular paint acts, and you can adapt from there. Some work best in an even glaze, some lift well if you go back in with a clean brush, while others are fun to push around and add more and more paint drops to create textures. We are not just looking at the colors, but finding out how they feel to paint with. Because the focus of this is on the single pigments, when in doubt, I'll refer to each paint by the pigment name. I understand that naming a paint benzimidazoline orange can look intimidating, and the chosen paint name of autumn orange may be more intuitive, but I want to learn about the pigments, so I'll focus on that. Since I mentioned the benzimidazoline, both that and the pyrrole orange are beyond beautiful. I love that we get two oranges that aren't just different in undertone and vibrancy, but also create completely different textures and handle very differently. You get this very grainy and granulating benzimidazoline orange, and then the pyrrole orange is incredibly transparent and moves across the page so easily. The Mission watercolors don't use any cadmiums. That's a big difference to my acrylic paint palette, where I go from earth tones like transparent red iron oxides pretty much directly to the opaque and intense cadmiums, and I actually don't use a lot of quinacridone paints. So a lot of these reds are a new territory for me. I was worried that they would look quite similar, but they all feel very different on paper and in the way they move and flow and build up. Benzimidazoline carmine, rose madder, and the anthraquinone red are standout colors immediately. All the quinacridones feel like they'll be good for glazing and layering, as they also lift easily with a clean brush and create a smooth texture overall. Do you have specific pigments in the quinacridone red area that you prefer over others? I'm a bit overwhelmed with all these options, so I'll have to use them in actual sketches to see how they act and mix and layer. Now, a favorite part of this swatching session, the violets. The quinacridone violet gives us a deep berry color, and then the ultramarine violet is incredibly soft and has a subtle granulation. Dioxazine violet is a favorite pigment of mine, and it's just as intense and beautiful here as on my acrylic palette. And then one of the reasons I opted for the 34 color set, Indanthrone Blue or Anthraquinone Blue. This has become a staple on my palette over the last half year, though I've used it since before that. It really mixes beautifully with earth tones, especially if you are trying to avoid a greenish undertone in your neutrals. It's also very transparent and doesn't have any granulation, so I just kind of always return to it for my base paint layers especially. Next, we have some of the workhorse blues on my acrylic palette, here with ultramarine blue and cobalt blue. You probably have at least one of these on your own palette as well, and they also complement each other quite well. The cerulean blue was the problem child, with the binder separating when I squeezed it out on the palette, but when swatching it, it applied perfectly fine. I didn't notice any issue here. It's a bit light and a bit muted, not too artificially bright, so I'm interested to see if I can use this for a blue sky, maybe even mix it with a phthalo blue to tone down the intensity of those. Speaking of phthalo blue, here we go. These aren't always on my paint palettes, but whenever I need a paint that really packs a punch, they are perfect. As watercolors, they are so much fun to play around with, going from nearly transparent to those intense, saturated patterns in my wet-on-wet swatches. The perfect ocean colors, and we have both the red shade and green shade in this set. Even looking at this page of swatches now, the two phthalo blues really stand out. They kind of glow and seem to be jumping off the page. The next paint was such a surprise. It didn't stand out to me when I originally looked at swatches to decide on which set of these to buy, but here on paper it took my breath away. It has such a pleasing tone, and when I looked up the pigment number, I knew why I was so drawn to it. This is PB36 Cobalt Chromite, which comes in different versions, and it has a turquoise version that is probably one of my most used paints in acrylics. We have two of these Cobalt Chromites here in the set. Here the blue one first and the turquoise version next to it. Both of them are gorgeous, semi-opaque to opaque, and I can't wait to paint shadows and surreal night scenes with these. Overall, I'm really happy with the selection of blues. They come with a lot of different textures, different intensities, and I love that we have two Cobalt Chromites. Those are just personal favorites. To wrap up the blue area of the palette, we get a cobalt blue variation with this teal color. Something to mix with the phthalos and other cobalt blues for water or very intense sky colors. This is also some kind of effect color that I would use for magical spells in my fantasy art. And then we get two greens, both phthalo greens, though one is confusingly named Viridian on the tube. Like the phthalo blues, where we differentiate between green and red shades, the two greens also come with different undertones, so we have both a cool and a warm option. The nickel azo yellow could have been placed with the yellow paints as well, but it does have a greenish undertone that transitions us nicely into the ochres here. The two ochres, both are yellow iron oxides, one transparent and one opaque, is where I messed up my swatch order, so beware, watch the little arrow that marks which paint is which. Honestly, I'm amazed that I only messed up once on this entire spread. Then for our browns, we get a burnt sienna, which for some mysterious reason is a PR 102, so this looks more like a light burnt umber to me. Then a reddish brown, which is also a benzimidazolone pigment, so we have a yellow, orange, red, and now a brown. And they all seem to come with some really beautiful texturing. The Van Dyke brown is a cool toned brown iron oxide, which I generally use a lot for mixing transparent shadows. And then we have an interesting black with the iron Cobalt Chromite, a pigment I've never even seen before, and that gives us some beautiful granulation. So I might actually not add Lunar Black by Daniel Smith to my travel palette. This would kind of do the trick for me. Overall, I really like these. There are a lot of the staples one would want, but also some unique inclusions and beautiful new discoveries. I'll have to test out all those cool toned reds as I'm less familiar with that side of the color palette and want to make sure they don't overlap too much. But there are some standout colors for me even now, and some I do know from my acrylic palette, like the quinacridone magenta. I'm really drawn to the anthraquinone red because its tone reminds me of the alizarin crimson hue by Golden, which is a pigment mix but such a beautiful color. So the Mission one will serve that purpose in watercolor form. The Chinese white is very subtle, which is good. If I want opaque paint, I'd reach for either a titanium white or even a gouache paint instead. I hope that this will look natural in a watercolor illustration. Since I had the Hwahong bamboo paper sketchbook already out from some other swatches, I tried out the brown iron oxide and then the pyrrole orange and the chromite blue on it. This paper takes a while to really soak up liquids, and it gave the pigments time to create some pretty patterns. This is also a great paper if you want to lift your paint with a clean brush. It gives you enough time with how slowly the paint sinks in. You can see me kind of pushing the liquid around for quite a long time. I'm also starting to test out my EO brushes, the two travel brushes, and I have to say I really like them so far. They hold a lot of water, but also has a lot of tension to the bristles, so I can push my pigments around with some force. I made some extra swatches of mostly magenta tones and the dioxazine violet, which has a lower lightfastness in general. I'll keep one of these swatches in sunlight and one in a dark drawer, and I'll check back in on these in a future art vlog or painting video for sure, to compare how they look. For a quick test sketch, I painted a master study detail of Frank Dixie's The Two Crowns. I wanted to explore all these different reds and magentas, so this was a great inspiration to start with. I'm mixing on paper, so that I can become more familiar with each paint on its own. So I actually started with just pure water in a large fluffy brush to grab the silhouette surrounding the face. So all the paints I'll be using are straight from the pan, not mixed on my palette. And the only mixing happens wet on paper or by glazing over a previous color layer. I really recommend this approach if you're still unfamiliar with a palette as well, so you can get to know each paint on its own. I'm actually not really used to the Hwahong bamboo paper, especially for watercolors, so I'll have to sketch more with them on other papers as well that I'm more familiar with. But those mixing tests earlier revealed such beautiful textures that I just wanted to continue on the bamboo paper for now. It soaks up a lot of water, so the paints don't move around as much compared to my swatches in the Hwahong cold pressed sketchbook earlier. This feels like painting on a sponge sometimes, but the paints look luminous on it and it gave me a nice amount of precision and control as well. Now, while I'm painting and testing, let's talk about prices. One reason I got this set was the cheap price compared to other paint brands with similar sets and selections, or even compared to getting a few paint tubes open stock. But I know that Mijello Mission is a bit more expensive internationally than here in South Korea. And at the same time, brands that are expensive for me here as they are imports, like Daniel Smith or Quor, might be closer to the Mission in price for you depending on where you source your art supplies. This set retails at 175,000 won on Hwahong, my go-to online art shop here. The smallest set of the Pure Pigment line with 17 paints is 74,000 won, and Hwahong.net isn't always the cheapest option. I just don't like some of the other shopping platforms like Hwahong. Now I just checked prices on Jackson's Art, and they don't have the Pure Pigment line but some of the other sets as well as individual tubes for comparison's sake. From the A series, so the cheapest pigment line, the Ultramarine Violet, for example, retails at around £8 or just over $11. That same Ultramarine Violet costs 4,200 won on Hwahong, so just about £2 or $2.75. My beloved Anthraquinone Blue from the E series, so a more expensive pigment, is over £16 or nearly $22 on Jackson's Art, while only costing 9,400 Korean won, so less than £5 or around $6. So the individual paint tubes here in Korea are about a quarter of the price. I did see the Pure Pigment sets on Amazon as well, with the largest set, the one I have, coming in at around $145, so about 220,000 won, compared to the 175,000 won I got it for. And I also had a bit of a coupon, a 10% coupon on top of that, so I got it for even cheaper. But the sets overall do seem to be closer to the original pricing than individual paint tubes, so that might be a closer match. I just want to mention all of that because it is relevant for a review. I really love these paints. At a first impression, the colors are so vibrant and I enjoyed my test sketches with them. I've also used them in travel sketches since, and they include so many unique pigments and also personal favorites, so it's like this set is custom made for me. But the price did play a large role in my choice, as the Mission set was so much more affordable than similar sets by other non-Korean brands. I don't want to be too precious with these, use them without worry, and it's also easy for me to restock or add other individual paint tubes as I go along. If you have access to these pure pigment sets instead of individual paint tubes, I think they are wonderful for learning about pigments and their unique properties. And I've heard from many other artists both here in Korea and abroad that they really like these gold line watercolors in general for how vibrant they are. But it's kind of tricky to recommend them to you, right? I can't be sure these would have even been on my radar if not for the affordable price here in Korea, right? So I just want to be honest about that. Art material costs always vary a lot around the globe with importing and exchange rates and nowadays tariffs, and I do think that price plays a role when we make our art material choices. In my quick studies here, I feel like I got a better sense for all the different reds and oranges in this set. I didn't feel like they had too much overlap. I always wanted a particular shade, a particular cool undertone or warm undertone or brightness or texture for the different parts of my sketches. And they also created some beautiful, very light color washes for the skin tones on these two very pale portraits. The Chinese white fit seamlessly into the paintings, disappearing into the paint instead of sitting on top of the paint as visible or even chalky texture. It subtly brightened areas, and I really like the effect. Finally, let's take a look at some ink and nib pens. Here's some really old Evi lore. I started out drawing manga, made some indie comic books with friends while I attended art school, and even got to publish a couple of stories. So dip pens feel like old friends. Back then I mostly used a G pen, a Maru pen, and both of those with the liter ink. And it really has been forever, so it will take me some time to get the hang of these again. I'm not a fan of the sample ink that came with my set. The color is barely there and the ink seemed to disappear out of my pens. It goes on better with a brush, but that kind of defeats the purpose for me, as I want to use these for writing and pen sketches. The Dracula ink, though, is everything. It's such a beautiful shade, bright, but not a fire engine red. And the magenta undertone is very subtle, but definitely there. All the different pens came with difficulty ratings that I'm ignoring, since those seem to apply to writing and calligraphy, and an easy-to-use calligraphy pen might be all the more difficult to draw with, after all. Here you can see the point where I gave up on my sample ink, the Resurrection, a very soft blue and teal shade, inspired by a book by Leo Tolstoy. I don't know if I was doing something wrong, but yeah, it didn't really work for me. Old habits break hard, so I doodled tiny eyes and characters with these different pen options. While the number 1 creates uniform lines, probably great for writing, it was difficult for sketching as there's no line variety. The second one is really fun to look at and its lines are very precise. I was worried this would be just a gimmicky little pen, but I could see myself using this one for details. My favorite is number 3, which has some nice line variety if you use pressure, feels soft and a bit bouncy, and is very forgiving when sketching and cross-hatching and just doodling along. Like I said, I know next to nothing about the world of ink and fountain pens, so let me know if you do any calligraphy or if you have favorites that you recommend. I've by now found out that the glitter inks are really intended to be put into cartridges that you then shake before use. Make sure all the glitter is evenly suspended in the ink, because using them with these kind of dip pens was nearly impossible, as the glitter would settle back down at the bottom of the jar before I even got to put my pen into the ink jar. So I've been reaching for the Dracula ink the most, since that one doesn't require me to shake and mix the ink before each use. I'm both scared and excited. The whole fountain pen and ink area of art supplies feels like a rabbit hole to go down, that once you start you can't stop, and there's just so many options. But I think since I've been using my simple preppy fountain pens now for over a year and really enjoy them for sketching and writing and do a lot of both, that I will actually be using these. I feel like they are also a bit of a collector's item. A lot of these inks, the special editions by Wearingeul that keep coming out, I could see myself just collecting some and barely ever using them. So I want to try and focus on shades that I use a lot in my sketchbooks and writing. And maybe get 1 or 2 fountain pens for my glitter inks for the future. Number 4 felt a bit stiffer, but the ink flows well, and I think this one will look great for more scribbly art and sketches. Number 5 is the easiest to control, with very subtle line variation, and I've since used it for writing tiny notes at which it excels. I really enjoy the Art Creation Sketchbook for this by Talens. I think the paper texture is perfect for ink and pen drawings. Overall, I'm really happy with all my new art supplies. I've accumulated so many though over the last few months, so now I have a bit of a no-buy ahead in my future. Beyond the watercolors, a lot of this was really a restock as well of acrylic paints that I needed and brushes that I needed. So far I can report that I'm happily using all of my new supplies. I've already painted on one of my 2 fans with traditional ink. And I filmed some more sketchbook sessions, both with ink and watercolors and some other art supplies, to really dive into more mixed media sketching, as that's always just so liberating and gives me new creative energy. The only thing I hate is this stupid resurrection ink, but what can you do? It was a free sample after all. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have tried any of these supplies, if you're a fountain pen and ink person, if you've tried the Mission watercolors, and which of these paint supplies you would love to see more of in my sketchbooks in the future. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next art video.